District Board of Commissioners. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Newman.
Here.
Commissioner Dale.
Here.
Commissioner Norton.
Here.
Commissioner Benson.
Present.
And President Coleman.
Here. Like to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, do we have a report on closed session?
Yes, no reportable action was taken in closed session.
Thank you. Going to move on to public comment. This portion of the agenda allows the public to speak to the board on various issues within our jurisdiction, but not itemized on this agenda. A member of the public may also request that a matter appearing on the consent calendar be pulled and discussed separately. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the board may not take any action on any item that does not appear on the agenda, and each speaker is limited to for a period of 3 minutes regarding each item on the agenda when those come up. Each speaker is limited to speak for a period of 3 minutes during public comment portion of the agenda regarding items of special interest to the public. Once again, not appearing on the agenda that are within the subject matter of the jurisdiction of the Board of Commissioners. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment at this time? Sure, come on up and if this is on a matter that's on the agenda, which is the Zoom public comment, then that will happen at the time that that comes back up.
Perfect.
But if there's any items that are not on the agenda, that's when those will be taken. All right. Sure, nobody wants to talk to us about anything not on the agenda?
No Girl Scout.
Okay. Then moving along, we're going to move on to the consent calendar. These are items that are adopted in a single motion. 2 items on the consent calendar tonight, adopting minutes for February 13th, 2025, and receiving district financial reports for January 2025. I have a motion to adopt, a motion and a second to adopt the consent calendar. Since it's a consent, there's no discussion. We're all here, so we can signify in favor by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Consent calendar passes. Moving right along to communications, reports, and correspondence received.
We do have 2 items for correspondence received. They each apply to item 11E. So we'll bring those forward at that point in time, read them into the record. Copies are made available over the next to the agendas. Both pieces of correspondence relate to item E, considering public comment via Zoom.
All right. And then executive director's report.
Okay. So a few things to report on tonight. One of the things that I'm most notably excited about, having been a Boy Scout and a Boy Scout leader, is we've been approached for an Eagle Scout project here at Whidley Island Marina. So those of you who've been around a while know that one of my personal goals has been to put a life vest station here on Humboldt Bay, because we see too many children running up and down the docks, either unattended or without life vests. And I got news for you, kids don't float. So Troy Nickley and I have worked on a program to see if we can get some life vests funded, and lo and behold, we can, but we need a hut. We need a place where they can be stored, where we can lock them down at night. So we have a young man who has brought his name forward to be considered for an Eagle Scout project here at Whidley Island Marina. I'll be meeting with him next week and on Wednesday afternoon. I believe it's at 4:30. So I'm very excited to show him the plans that have been drawn for that, and hopefully supporting him in that. So that may or may not require some board action depending on costs. Most Eagle Scout projects are fully funded by donation. That's part of the Eagle Scout project. There is some foundation that we will require that would be above and beyond that, but I think we're going to be able to accomplish this. So just some good news, want to share it with you. Those kind of things don't happen very often. So once we have an approved project, I'll bring him in to meet everybody, and then he'll give us progress updates as he goes along. And then finally a ribbon cutting for his project.
And we'll donate. The board will.
Great, absolutely, thank you.
Thanks for giving me that.
EPA Brownfield.
We'll put our name in and donate on all our behalf.
EPA Brownfields, everyone is in this room, I think for the most part, is aware that we were 2 years ago actually received a community-wide assessment grant through the US EPA Brownfields program, and for a number of reasons related to some of the parcels that are not in district ownership. It's taken a while for us to be able to come to agreement and issue the RFQ. The good news is we issued it. We received 3 very qualified responses. Those respondents have been interviewed, and we're moving forward through that process and look to bring this to you back in April for acceptance of a contract and then commencing work. We have a cruise ship inbound on April 27th. The Europa 2 is coming. This particular group is very serious about their visit to the Redwoods and to Humboldt Bay. They'll be here at 0700. See, it's the 27th, Sunday? In any event, headed our way very soon. Mindy's busy working on that along with Swan over at the City of Eureka and various departments. The Humboldt Harbor Safety Committee will have our March meeting, and I have a typo. Well, now you all know I make mistakes. March 20th, so next Thursday, 0900 here in this room. And then let's talk a little bit about our nearshore placement project. A big topic recently has been the placement of beneficial reuse of dredge materials. In this particular case, the dredge material that will come out of the barn entrance of Humboldt Bay will be placed offshore. And it's not right on the shoreline. This is out a bit, certain depths of water. But it'll carry through tide into the shoreline. So right now, as of today, the nearshore placement project is fully permitted. There's a full permitted package. Savannah, next door at the Army Corps of Engineers, and Peter Mole have really poured their hearts and soul into this, along with a number of various people from agencies. But I'm happy to report that is permitted. There's some next steps that are occurring, but it looks like we're going to have a commencement of nearshore placement here before too long.
That's awesome.
So congratulations to them.
Can I ask just a question of technical interest? Do they still use, do they use the hopper?
That is correct.
Or the barge, so they just bring the barge in close enough to shore and.
That is
way?
correct. And part of this will be to prove the suitability of the barge operating in those conditions. And ultimately, the placement will be at the discretion of the barge captain, right? They've got to be able to navigate the waters and dump. And if the conditions don't merit that, hoods is still an option. But the goal, of course, is to put as much and hopefully have the correct conditions there. If they come in July, which is one of their windows, that is a possibility. That's not the mansion dredge. That's a separate item. But really, right now, we've got to look at the work windows, and that's part of the next steps that'll be occurring with the Corps. We should be able to bring you an update on that next month. I think that's moving very rapidly right now, but I met with them day before yesterday, and there's some pretty big smiles on some faces. That's the same sentiment that we want to use for beach placement here that our district engineer and I are working on for the future. And obviously we have a lot of dredging. I don't want to speak on Rob's dredging, but we have a lot of reasons to really get behind beneficial reuse and move it forward. I know that Commissioner Benson has met with me and Rob both, and there's a real desire from many to work on this. But this is the step one project. That sediment happens to be the exact sediment for nearshore or beach placement. The Army Corps of Engineers 2025 dredge schedule. So I'm happy to report that Manson was successful in their bids to do the West Coast dredge hopper contract, which is where the bulk of our barn entrance dredge comes each year. Money has been allocated, so we are not in a situation where this is being pulled back by some of the current decisions being made in Washington. This funding is in place. Right now, it looks like we'll have a base dredge of 600,000 cubic yards, and they also have qualified for the optional 300,000 cubic yards. That dredge is currently on the East Coast, so hopefully everything lines up and it ends up the way we need it to be for our timing. But the plan is for it to be here in July and take approximately 900,000 cubic yards out of the barn entrance. This is the second time I've been able to report this, but for the district, this is the last 4 years successively with the Army Corps. The Army Corps dredge, the Aquina, will be due here in April for 10 to 14 days to do federal channel work within the federal channel. So remember, we have the federal channel coming through into the city of Eureka, and then we traverse to the west to the Samoa Channel and to the east, if you will, to the Eureka Channel. It's important to note when we say 10 to 14 days for dredge work, there's a day of mobilization on the end and a day of demobilization. So that actually gives us about 8 to 12 dredge days in there. And then finally, the Army Corps dredge, the Esseance, which is a much larger dredge, is due here in May for 8 to 9 days of barn entrance dredge work. We always have the option of coming back at the end of the season if possible and taking down some of the humps that happened, and those are just high spots. And that's usually what keeps us open throughout the winter. This is the first winter that I'm aware of that we haven't had a draft restriction. So things are working to our advantage. Humboldt Bay Municipal Water Districts. I'm going to go through some of the meetings that I've had this week or in this past month, as well as our district engineer was participating in that meeting. But we met with Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, talked with their new incoming general manager, Michiko, and with John Friedenbaum. I want to congratulate John on his decision to retire and all the great work that he's done while he's been at Humboldt Bay Municipal. But we talked about some of our general projects, obviously our industrial water line and some of the improvements they're looking to do on their domestic line and upcoming work. We do participate in a lot of effort with Humboldt Bay Municipal on the Samoa Peninsula. So very important relationship. I'm glad that we're able to continue that as there's a leadership change. Commissioner Newman joined me a couple Saturdays, about 3 Saturdays ago, to meet with Assemblyman Chris Rogers, talk about his proposed Assembly Bill 472 with an emphasis on port infrastructure and financing for such. I think Chris is going to be somebody that we spend a lot of time with. He's very interested in moving things forward. The job creation, the economic development creation that comes from such investments. Met with environmental stewards such as EPIC, Waterkeeper, Environment California. Those are always great meetings, a lot of good mentorship there, especially for me, who in some cases is not as experienced in these areas. And so I'm very grateful to be having those recurring meetings. Labor unions and the trades education portion of the colleges, a lot of recurring meetings there. And I was able to talk to a very dear friend, Connie Stewart, the other day for the first time in a while, and their MC3 program. So a lot occurring there. California Association of Port Authorities had its Ports Day, and I want to reach out and thank you to Martha Miller, the president of the CAPA of CAPA, the California Association of Port Authorities. I was in Sacramento and fell crazy ill, and I was going to be having a chat with Rick Zabur and other elected officials for a panel at Ports Day, but I wasn't able to do it. So Martha stepped in for me. So I'm very, very grateful for that. Also, the California Ports and Offshore Wind Symposium happened. I appreciate you, Greg, Rob, and Stephen. I'm grateful that you were able to attend. Stephen, thanks for filling in on that panel. That was day 2 of me laying on a floor. But thank you very much. It's really a bummer that I missed those, but lots of nice compliments from people and on our team and the showing down there. And then finally, I'd like to welcome the research vessel Northwind to Humboldt Bay, recognizing Cal Poly's College of Natural Sciences, or Natural Resources and Sciences, and congratulating Dean Eric Riggs, Captain Jim Long, Eric Burgell, and the crew. We put together a nice welcome for the vessel into Humboldt Bay, supported by the U.S. Coast Guard, Z&Z Marine, some other mariners, and of course the Humboldt Bay fireboat, and the welcome. And then of course they went over to the Aquatic Center for a bit of a celebration. That is a vessel that's moored here. Its home is Woodley Island here in Humboldt Bay. So that's the ED's report for the month. I'll pass it down to Rob.
You're going to hear plenty from me tonight, so I'll keep this short. 2 weeks ago, attended the 3rd annual MMIP conference with the Yurok tribe, the Submerged Indigenous Peoples Conference. Then not next week, the week after, I'll be presenting at the Offshore Wind Transmission West Conference in San Francisco.
Nothing for me.
Nothing from the treasurer tonight. Don't know if, I know the district engineer doesn't have, do you have a report, Mike?
You covered
Okay.
things that we were working on.
Isn't it part of your contract? Don't you have to give us a report?
Mike was out first thing this morning in the rain with me, so.
We'll consider that last then. District planner?
Oh, good. Thank you, Con.
Vanessa Blodgett, District Planner. We have received and I'm reviewing an application for Fairhaven Dock maintenance and repairs, so that will be coming before you in the next few months. There's a couple other applications that are pending and on hold, awaiting additional information from the applicants. And then just ongoing coordination support with district staff. And then did participate in a meeting with the Coastal Commission about the Spartina eradication Baywide CDP and the need for renewal of that. So that went well. And we are going to be continuing to coordinate with project partners to get that renewed. That's my report. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's move on to commissioners' reports, and I guess we can only start at this side with Aaron.
My report in the last meeting was good news in the commercial fishing business because we had a really good crab season. A lot of folks caught some crabs and it was almost double the price we've gotten in the past. So that was good news. But this meeting, we've got bad news when it comes to salmon season in California. Most of us expected a pretty robust commercial and recreational salmon season in California after 3 wet years, as we would normally expect. But when the numbers came out from the various agencies that manage the very complex season structuring, it actually trended lower than prior years. So it looks like 2025 is going to be the 3rd year in a row that California won't have any commercial or recreational salmon fishing. So that's the bad news. And that's pretty much my report tonight.
Greg or Greg?
Grab.
Greg.
Not much to report. Stephen and I, Rob, attended a meeting, a conference, I guess, in Long Beach. Got to tour the port, got to hear what they have going on and actually see where and what their plan is. Got to talk to a lot of the people that are working on port projects like this up and down the state, and then see some of the people that we've worked with for the last, several years. I have a good relationship with a few that we went to Scotland last year with, and we all are pretty lockstep. We communicate not on a daily basis, but certainly every week. And it's been highly educational. Long Beach was very gracious. If you've never been to a big port like that, they're probably the biggest. I mean, there isn't a whole lot bigger than that. It's a pretty amazing spot. And what they're planning to do is, almost unconscionable. Is that a word?
It is, but I'm not sure if that's the one you meant.
Inconceivable.
Inconceivable?
Yeah,
I don't know. What they're planning to do is
it's a pretty impressive
yeah.
project.
And that's where I'll leave it, Stephen. You can pass on to the next.
All right, Craig?
Not a lot to report other than continue to go to the Samoa community meetings facilitated by Rob and Kristen Worth at the Women's Club, and they continue to be super beneficial and have continued follow-on discussions about beneficial reuse of dredge material with Matt St. John and with Chris. Yeah, those are the main things that I've been up to since last time we were here.
All right, thank you. And Jeff?
I have nothing to report.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I don't have much myself that hasn't been said. Went down to Long Beach for that conference and had the opportunity to speak on a panel with some other ports that seemed to go really well, make a good connections, and that there's an air of realistic, cautious optimism that things are moving forward on lots of fronts with port development, and that outside forces aren't going to stop the work that California is doing. And yeah, I agree. Like we ended it with a little harbor cruise around the port of Long Beach and seeing like just those container ships just lined up one after the other, and these
Like fishing boat.
automatic cranes dropping them onto automatic trucks and everything moving around is unconscionable. And let's see, I also had the opportunity to attend the past couple of the Samoa Women's Club meetings and really impressed with the level of community engagement there. The community is really interested in what's going on over there. And also, I think taking a very realistic view, understanding that that's going to be one of the most heavily impacted communities in terms of where the port is being built right at that spot. And so I think, I appreciate the effort that's going into having those meetings and the continued outreach that we're doing. And I think it's paying off just in terms of the community knowing what's going on. And then my final pitch that I always do at this time of year is even though I'm going to be out of town again this year for it, the Perilous Plunge is coming up the end of this month to support the Redwood Discovery Museum, where brave people go dress up in silly costumes and jump in the bay. I think it's the last Saturday of this month. I did it. I've done it a number of years, and I'll do it again one of these years, but not this one. But it's a great thing to go online to the Redwood Discovery Museum and support your favorite plunger to help keep a small science museum for kids around.
Can I add one more thing? You did a wonderful
Okay.
job speaking in Long Beach. You did a great job.
I appreciate that. I was telling people, sometimes it feels like when I go to those things, like I black out, and when I come down, I'm like, wait, what did I just say? Like, I don't even remember what happened, but
I don't think you did that.
We received a lot of comments in the office,
Good job.
complimenting your participation.
thank you. I appreciate
Mine or his?
that. Yeah. I think the compliments were like your suit and all right, moving on to unfinished business. Oh, before we do, was there a wish to rearrange the agenda at all for one of our presenters?
Item, I don't remember the item number, but the green terminal item, the speakers.
11C.
11C, the speaker is currently on the East Coast, and so it is almost 9:30 for him. And if
Would they be ready to present if we move that one to the top?
Gary, did you make Scott a co-host?
I make a motion that we move item 11C to the top of the new business agenda.
I'll second that.
I think if we can just wait to make sure that the presenter is okay with that as well. And, yeah.
Scott, are you out there and are you ready?
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. I am ready and looking forward to presenting tonight on this particular topic and agenda item.
Super.
All right,
All right,
great.
hang in there
Do I
for
even
just a
need a
minute.
motion in, or can I just do that as president?
You can move it around.
Okay, so be it then. Let's move item C to before unfinished business, and then we'll go into unfinished business.
Okay. Scott, do you need me to present for you? Or can you?
If I have shareability, I'm happy to drive the slides on this end.
All right, so while Scott brings that up, I'll give you some context. So in January of 2024, the board adopted a resolution to create a roadmap for a green terminal. And that had a deadline of March of 25. So Scott is going to present the strategy and roadmap to you tonight and lay out the schedule for both the scope and schedule of what this is going to look like. It's all yours, Scott.
Great. And good evening, everyone. Am I coming through clear to everyone on the other end of the call?
Yes.
Louder.
Yes, yeah, if there's, and turn the volume up. I don't know if there is.
Just turn the dial there.
Right now.
Go ahead, Scott.
All right.
Terrific. All right, good. Well, and I'll also speak loud as well. So appreciate the opportunity to speak to this group and to be involved in this very important project. Sorry I couldn't be with you tonight in Humboldt, but certainly looking forward to engaging in the coming weeks on this aspect of the broad strategy that you're undertaking with the wind port and facility. Myself and my team are advancing and working towards the roadmap and strategy that I'll present to you tonight. We've started the process, and we'll walk you through aspects of the process this evening. It's a short presentation. I know it's in your agenda packet. It's about 9 slides. And certainly we'll look forward to answering any questions at the end of the presentation and kind of ready ourselves as we move forward through the next 6 to 7 to 8 weeks as we prepare this. So look, as Rob mentioned, and through your resolution, your desire is to achieve net zero at this port. And certainly it's a great goal and one that we look forward to helping you achieve through this analysis and through incremental implementation of technologies and other approaches that will help you get to that point. Our job is to move through this process over 3 tasks. The tasks are certainly number 1, to define the study area and what we're going to be assessing in terms of emissions and collecting the data that gives us sort of this baseline fundamental understanding of the energy that is consumed, not really today because it's a vacant site, but that would be consumed and used as part of the master plan and 30% design that's underway now. And then we want to look at a couple of scenarios. And these are things that you outline in your resolution, as well as other things that we see as industry partners and experts working from shore power and technology to on-site energy generation, battery storage systems, and just being smart with how we do things and operate things at the site. And I'll just give you, we're doing a very similar assignment right now in Victoria, BC at the breakwater at Ogden Point, where we are working with the shipping industry to assess 9 different technologies from fundamental core shore power systems all the way to carbon capture systems, hydrogen systems, hybrid systems, to find the best mix for them to get ships to reduce emissions while they're at port, while they're hoteling at berth, as well as for all the on-site equipment as well. So we're very much up to speed with a lot of the technology, even with some of the ongoing work that's happening right now. As we have on other projects, whether it's working for the cruise industry or cargo ports or a mix of different ports, what we typically strive to do, especially for projects that are in design, is understand what is being done today in the design to reduce to the greatest extent possible emissions associated with the defined area, right? And in this case, it's the uplands and the vessels at berth and sort of the operations associated with the port itself. That'll be our sort of defined area that we'll be doing the analysis on. And then look at a series of scenarios where we could change up the current design or implement over time post-opening of the project to work towards the achievement in net zero. And sometimes we're able to get net negative, depending upon the configurations and the things that we want to do. We want to, through design, avoid to the greatest extent possible the emissions that we can and the timeline that we have and the fundamental date that we need to open the project. And then we could either go neutral or we can quickly implement additional strategies as funding becomes available, as additional phases are implemented to get to that net zero carbon aspect of the project overall. And so what we want to do is move down this curve of the current design, get past opening, unless we can really push that remaining emissions level very, very small to mitigate it or get right to zero carbon. And then in the operation stage, if we're not able to do it, we'll work to, through the roadmap, be able to push that all the way down to a zero carbon strategy. I just flashed on the screen the timeline that we'll be working through. So here we are today in mid-March, where we've defined the scope, defined the approach. We're here tonight presenting to you, the direction moving forward. And post this meeting and post your questions and direction, we're going to be working on the energy inputs and the baseline associated with the project and the master plan and this 30% design set as they exist today, and the emission and carbon mitigation strategies that are already inherent in all that design work. Then task 2 will, as I mentioned, to start to explore those scenarios with the current plan and design kind of being our current case, and looking at low to moderate and then moderate to high scenarios that allow us to see how best, when we look across the matrix, when we look at costs, when we look at the amount of emissions, the types of emissions, what the best mix of technologies could be in terms of implementing to getting to that zero carbon goal. We'll evaluate those scenarios. We're going to do all of that over really the next 4 weeks. And then we want to sit down with everybody on the committee and start to unpack the options and the trade-offs associated with those options. And we'll work through Rob and the team to schedule that sometime in mid to late April. With the feedback and direction provided as part of that discussion, we'll then move into the final task, which is the actual plan writing, the strategy making, and the roadmap moving forward associated with the assignment. As I mentioned, we already are in the process of collecting all the information and starting to leverage the existing package of work and studies and design work to understand the uses, understand the energy consumptive levels, understand the traffic, project the traffic moving forward. That is, of course, part of the process as well, is not just understanding kind of a snapshot in time in a finite year, but looking over the course of the next 20 to 25 years, how much vessel traffic, how much hoteling is occurring at berth, what are the actual moves of vehicles and operations on the site. So we can really chart a baseline opening year and then 25 years into the future, what that energy use case is. And we'll forecast all of those, 20 to 25 years out into the future. And then the fun really begins. Well, before we get to that, our site, you can define what is going to be net zero and net neutral many different ways. Generally, we recommend that we're going to focus on, a particular site and hoteling operations at berth. We're not looking to measure emissions associated with vessels moving, once they're off berth through the harbor and out into open ocean. We're really sort of focusing on those scope emissions that are associated directly with the project itself. If there are additional things we can bring to the analysis and observations that are outside of the site, but that would be helpful to reducing emissions and our overall carbon footprint associated with the project, we'll certainly bring those to the fore as well. We'll then move into task 2. So as I mentioned, having that first scenario, which is kind of our baseline or our current case of where we are today in the master planning, the design process, and how far we're able to go with those components being implemented and being designed today in terms of getting to a certain point of avoided emissions on the site. We'll then, and I'll show you a little bit more detail on this, define these next 2 cases. And one is sort of the low to moderate case, that some additional improvements that are maybe tried and true technologies, or that we know they're cost effective, or that we know there's funding available for these types of things. We're not taking a lot of risk in certain, trying to test something out new and start to apply those to the base case and model their emissions, model what the costs are, and sort of understand all the different components associated with that. And they'll have a more aggressive case as well. So we'll take that baseline case and the other 2 scenarios, and in a matrix format, we'll have modeled CO2 and SOx and NOx and particulate emissions and all the other components. We'll understand, relatively speaking, what we think the CapEx associated with advancing to the second and the third scenario, looking at individual technologies, what type of OpEx outlay, and sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. That's certainly in Victoria right now, when we look at shore power provided by barge systems versus hydrogen systems. It's when you talk to manufacturers, it's a real mix. And sometimes things are shielded by intellectual property, and they don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of what it's going to cost once it's operational. And so we'll do our utmost to get as much of that understanding of the OpEx outlay associated with those systems. How much space that they operate, what's the infrastructure lifespan, are they adaptable, are they plug and play for additional new technologies that may come along, et cetera. And then we'll have that work session where we sort of lay out all of the scenarios, the pros, the cons, and give you a sort of series of decision making matrices that allow you to sort of see And a lot of times it's an assembly. Let's take, something from column A and something from column B, and that becomes what we think is the most appropriate approach moving forward as we start to get into the plan writing. And as I mentioned, today solar is already something that's contemplated on the site. Shore power is something that's contemplated on the site. And so these are all things that we'll have in our current or in our base case. And then we'll start to understand, the electrification of the fleet or battery storage. We haven't unpacked all of the elements that'll be in these scenarios. We'll be doing that over the next couple of weeks to sort of have that menu of technologies that we think sort of fits within this low to moderate risk scenario 2 approach. And then we'll add to that additional things, large scale, nickel battery electric storage systems or hydrogen or whatever it might be, to really clearly define, each of those cases and to study them. And as I mentioned, then start to look at them, project the emissions associated with each, and really understand how each gets to our goal of zero carbon. Once that's complete, post our late April strategy session, we'll take the direction from that meeting and we'll get into the plan making and the roadmap and strategy writing with all of the things that you would expect. A synopsis of the work and the methodology and the technologies that were reviewed, an illustrative plan based on how those technologies, and a lot of times it's the site plan and pop-up bubbles that start to show you locations of different technologies and what they do in terms of getting to that goal of zero emissions on the site. And we want to make sure that we're also giving you direction and understanding as to how things will roll out, how things will be phased, how they're communicated to your constituents and to the stakeholders in your community, and circulate that as a draft, then in its final form, and really be ready to finalize and get the request your review and approval at a June board meeting or somewhere around that time. And one thing that Rob made very clear, and we absolutely see the benefit of making sure sometimes complicated ideas are distilled into something that's really easily understood by the general public, your stakeholders, your community members and your neighbors, but also the folks that you're going to be writing grants for, the elected officials that are the ones that are able to take it to a state or a federal level to seek funding, seek partnerships, both in the public and the private sector. We've done a lot of work for NOAA and other agencies to really take things like marsh creation or things like green port planning and make graphic assemblages of those ideas and make them understandable to the vast majority of the public and the stakeholders that are involved. And so as an output, whether it's a couple of posters or just very clear, legible, illustrative plans and other elements that you can use either electronically online or in other ways, that'll be part of the ultimate deliverables moving forward. So that's the synopsis of our approach. I'll just kind of flash back up onto the screen the timeline and the schedule. This kind of serves as a good anchor point in terms of, again, of what we're doing and when we're going to do it by. But Rob, I'll turn it back over to you for the facilitation of questions and moving forward on this agenda item.
Thanks, Scott. And the board should just be aware that we are also facilitating a number of interested parties and affected communities to participate in this process.
Great. Well, thank you for the presentation. Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I do. I have a question and a comment. First, my comment is I'm just very excited to be moving towards net zero emissions. I know that that's the long-term goal and we're looking for carbon neutral first. My understanding is that carbon neutral is really getting the CO2 and that the zero emissions is all the other greenhouse gases. And Scott, you mentioned SOx and NOx. So I'm curious about nitrogen oxide and sulfur dioxide. What are our expected sources of those particular greenhouse gases? It's more obvious to me where the
Yeah, and sorry to speak over you. Generally, those are emissions from hoteling vessels and the engine types that are operating associated with those ships. One of the models that we used was developed by the EPA that allows us to sort of select the different tiered engine types, and it creates outputs associated with all of these, emissions profiles. There's about 6 of them that are on the dashboard that we use. But certainly, sulfur and nitrogen are a big part of, sort of the types of engines. A lot, it's the age of the engine often, and it's also the type of fuel that's being burned by those particular vessels while they're sort of sitting at berth, not connected to shore power, or as it doesn't happen instantaneously. Often the connection to the shore power system is a 45-minute down power by the vessel connecting to the local grid, and then the reverse is true as you come back online. The EPA model also lets us understand the grid as an average. Of course, in this case, in Northern California, what the fuel mix associated with the grid is, so that we can understand, again, by plugging into the system, there's still potentially, there's renewables in your mix, but there's also likely other things that are going to be contributing aspects of, not just carbon and particulate emissions, but sulfur and nitrogen as well.
Thank you.
Aaron?
Could you give us a little more explanation as to what relative CapEx investment and annual OpEx outlay is describing?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So, yeah, and here's a great example. Again, I'll go to the Victoria, work that we're doing, because we were just talking about this with them today. We're at that point where, as I mentioned, we looked at 9 technologies, and then that first dashboard look, we could say that one technology was more expensive or higher than another. So we kind of started to come up with a pecking order. Like, if you went to hydrogen, that'd probably be the most expensive approach given the fact that we need to accommodate 2 vessels with a design of 16 megawatts of consumptive power. So we need, 32 megawatts of power. And so we could look at that order of, this shore power system, this other kind of system. And that's when we shortlisted the elements. We actually talked to vendors. And so for shore power and the other technology, we're able to say, okay, Watts Marine up in Washington State per berth can install a shore power system to meet our requirements with a capital investment, with an upfront cost plus an estimate of soft costs for, generally it runs to between $10 to $15 million per berth for cruise ships. For cargo vessels are much smaller. It's not as much of an outlay. Then we can say, all right, well, if we do a battery electric storage system, it's this, it's that. And so what that initial upfront cost to get the technology, whether it's shore power or solar power panels or whatever it is on the site, that becomes the upfront capital expenditure. And then on the operational side, sometimes it's very small. Sometimes it's a regular O&M charge associated with maintaining solar powers, solar panels, or maintaining the vehicle fleet on site. For going back to the example of shore power, generally in a seasonal location, you're going to power up the system, you're going to test the system, you're going to power down the system. On a year-round system, you've got probably about $50,000 to $100,000 of general maintenance that's done on the system. Getting water vapor out of sockets, checking all the switches and components, regular ongoing maintenance that's outside of warranty. And then there's the other side of, like on shore power, again, somebody's got to plug it in, right? So there's labor that's on site. There's a high power electrical, skilled professional that is plugging things in, that is monitoring the system, and others. And so that becomes on the operational side, so that we can sort of really look at, well, what's that upfront cost? And then what is the cost of the system, over time? And those are the types of, we'll look at those on each component, on each technology, so we can really understand the the cost ramifications of the decisions, right? We can say, wow, this will get us to zero carbon quick. But if we learn that, well, that's going to cost us 3 times more than something else. I mean, I think that's a critical decision point in the process, or at least one of the critical elements that you would look at in the process. Did
Thank
that answer your question?
I got a follow-up question to that. Excuse me, Jack Norton, Commissioner here. With those estimated CapEx budgets and cost, can you also include an expected life of those assets? Because I think some of those investments may have a longer lifespan, the expected lifespan than others, and just you know, I think sad to say, but on the solar aspects and batteries, those are probably coming in more into question as far as the expected lifetime of those investments versus other sources to capture and store energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of a bullet point 4, or the fourth sub bullet under the second main thing, where the infrastructure lifespan is very important. Each system and type, batteries are going to give you 10 to 12 years life, and then you're going to have to do an exchange. Whereas, generally tried and true shore power systems have a life expectancy of about 20 years. And so we'll certainly give you either the very detailed information or sort of additional qualitative things that we've learned to add to that matrix and understand the trade-offs associated with different approaches.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I'd like to get this out to the public as well. I don't have a question, just a couple of comments. One, just talking about shore power, and I never thought about this until we went down to Long Beach and heard about some of the challenges that they're having with the shore power. And fortunately, for a lot of reasons, we don't have oil tankers coming in, but I guess the oil tankers don't like to plug into shore power for various reasons. So that's not an issue that we'll have here. And then throwing out, I'm really excited that we're doing this. I've been a big proponent of green terminal planning, and I'm gonna, then now that we're doing this, I'm gonna throw down the challenge that I hope this can be an initial phase that it will help inform opportunities to start looking at greater like green port planning and how to lower emissions on other aspects. But I do also fully realize we have to take this first step first, and we don't own a lot of the other port infrastructure, but it'd be great to be looking at all of the port operations after this. But with that, I'd like to ask if there's any comments or questions from the public. Yeah, please come up.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Smith. For those of you who don't know me, I am the program manager of Core Hub. And I just want to take a moment to emphasize the importance of community engagement in the Green Terminal roadmap process. The voices of those directly impacted by the development are important in a different way than the voices of engineers and consultants. And the green terminal is something that people are really excited about, and I think an opportunity for people to feel a lot of buy-in and good faith about this project. And as you very well know, we have a community that cares deeply about this bay and about the people and animals and plants that live nearby, and that people are pretty worried about this development because of that. And the current roadmap, as it's written when I read it over, lacks a clear commitment to community engagement, tribal consultation, and about how these advisory committees that you put together will inform the process. So Rob just mentioned that that there is a participation plan for interested parties in this process, but I'd really like to see that memorialized in the roadmap and in the strategies that come out of the roadmap. So I also was in Long Beach recently, and one thing that I learned there is they've been really, really successful in zero emissions strategies, and community leadership was really essential in their process down there. And so residents will view the Green Terminal Roadmap with community engagement as a tangible demonstration of good faith and prioritization of their health and well-being in this project. And I also think that a strong plan for community engagement strengthens our position when seeking state funding. That California recognizes the role of community engagement in project planning, and that emphasizing that aspect of it makes us more competitive for future funding opportunities. So I just encourage you to utilize the expertise that you have around you, particularly of the technical advisory committee, the community advisory committee, the Samoa committee that you're convening, possibly the aquaculture committee, and other relevant groups in developing the roadmap and the strategies that come out of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing no additional public comment, thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it and looking forward to seeing the results of it. Gonna move us. Thanks, Scott. Move us back to unfinished business and continue talking about the Humboldt Bay Offshore Wind Heavy Lift Marine Terminal project.
All right. So this is I can't remember the number, but this is our monthly update for at least a year now, I believe. So this is a list of the major activities that are currently underway. If there wasn't so much additional content, I would dwell on this for a minute, but I'll just tell you that those are the things that are consuming the majority of the team's time currently. Not sure what happened to those highlights there. So 30% design, CEQA, and everything else is well highlighted. I'm happy to come back to that if you want. Regarding advisory committees, these 6 committees are active, each meeting once a month or so, except for the 6th one there. We're in regular communication, don't need to meet that often. There's a lot going on with those groups. Happy to talk about those if you want. We also have 3 agency working groups and can answer questions about those. And then entertaining a Green Terminal Advisory Committee and a Baywide Master Plan Committee, though both of those topics might be covered by one of the committees above. So we're still sorting that out. I did a staff report 2 meetings ago detailing all of these advisory committees and all the details about them. That has been formalized into a memo that's now posted to the project website, so everyone can access all of the information about the committees, how they were established, who's on them. So look for that on the project website. And then in addition to all those committees, we're meeting also with all of these categories of stakeholders, interested parties, affected communities. Also recall that there are dozens of technical documents available to everyone in the public on the project website as well. All right, an update on the Waterfront Facility Improvement Program. So this is a grant program from the California Energy Commission, 45 million total budget throughout the state. It's exclusively for ports in California to prepare to support offshore wind. You, as the board, approved a nearly $20 million application in 2024. We submitted that application this past December. Here are the results. So we came in 2nd place. The CEC staff is recommending that we receive 18.25 million for advanced design and public engagement. Long Beach won 20 million. Well, is being recommended 20 million. Oakland and Richmond each $750,000, and they will likely focus on O&M and manufacturing. And then San Luis Harbor for 3 million to begin preparing for an O&M terminal.
Hey, Rob.
Yes.
See how Long Beach has the nice acronym mixed power?
Yeah.
I noticed we don't do that.
We've got one that is also power. It was the infra grant application. It's very similar.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was their grant application name, not their project name.
Okay.
So each one of our grants has had a fancy name, some acronyms.
Just long.
Yeah. Ours was actually powered with an ED, so I don't remember what that stood for. Economic development, maybe. So this table is the recommendations from CEC staff. and that goes before their board on March 17th at their business meeting. So the recommended awards could change. And be aware that these are the entities that submitted and are not being awarded anything. So these are partners and colleagues of ours, and so their success is important to us as well. So we want to support them, even if they don't receive funding through this particular grant program. And I honestly do not know who number 7 and 8 are. All right, so quick reminder of what we applied for. Community engagement related stipends for tribal participation and stipends for stakeholder community participation. Then a series of engagement strategies for different types of stakeholders, including a workforce development strategy, an evaluation of project benefits, and audiovisual community engagement materials. So we will have a much more professional website and social media and a number of other community engagement materials, audiovisual related. The stipends for tribal participation and the tribal government engagement strategy. We have NCIDC as a partner, Northern California Indian Development Council. And then Redwood Coast Action Agency is helping us with a lot of the community engagement components. So if you're not familiar with NCIDC, I encourage you to look them up. Great nonprofit organization locally, as well as RCAA that has decades of experience with community engagement. Additional components of the grants: green terminal related, an emissions reduction strategy, green terminal standards going beyond the ones that you just heard about. So we're taking that to a whole nother level. And then port design optimization modeling. Stakeholders and agencies have begun requesting additional supplemental studies beyond what we already had funded. So we're doing now through this grant even more visual simulations, more noise studies, enhanced biosecurity and environmental studies associated with the aquaculture community requesting that. Advanced planning for tenant relocations, enhanced marine biology analyses, additional geotechnical marine borings, which is a lot of money. That's a big chunk of the grant right there. Looking at the Baywater intake infrastructure that's associated with the Nordic project and the compatibility of how that infrastructure can work with this project. And then marine mammal and bird monitoring at the request of Cal Poly Humboldt marine mammal specialist. Some advanced engineering, refining the cost estimates, enhanced bridge tow-out simulations, taking that to another level. That's also a big chunk of money there. And then another big cost element is advanced engineering. And some almost $100,000 in application fees for various permits. And then finally, planning for various mitigation sites, including permitting, design, and special studies. So just a quick reminder of the relationship of funding sources over time. So this is a scale with 2020 at the top going down in time across the bottom. So we started this with a Headwaters Fund grant. Then district funds and the State Lands Commission grant were used to match and acquire a CEC grant, which was then used to acquire the PDIP grant, which itself is connected to the infra grants. And then this is the grant that I'm talking about at the moment, which is now connected to that PDIP grant. We also have a lot of EPA grants off to the side, also associated with the project, speculatively looking at the California bond, which will be connected to the construction through infra, and then private financing, which is also speculative at the moment. So that's how all the money fits together. And then there's the possibility of the RISE Act or whatever replaces that in the future. So temporarily, we are here. So that is all behind us. So there's more ahead of us than there is behind us. So we still have a lot of work ahead of us. And then these are all of the those same sources of funds. And on the right is the activities that we use to we use the money for. So those are the funds that are expended. These are the funds that are actively underway. And then these are the speculative funds. So that's how that all fits together. Here are the amounts of each one of the grants. And then that totals to 465 million so far. Phase 1 project's about 900 million and the overall project about 2 billion. So of that money that we've had so far, here's how it all kind of lines up. So construction is the highest cost. Second most expensive is design, then studies, reports, and permits. The community benefit program is the fourth biggest category. Then tribal capacity building and public engagement, Baywide master plan, green port strategy, then district staffing and conceptual planning. So that's in sequence of where we've spent money. And finally, timing for us to acquire the actual money from this program, we think it'll be somewhere between May and August. So you'll hear more about that in upcoming board meetings. All right, so monthly updates, technical speakers. Recall that we've got a number of speakers, up to 44 individuals presenting on various themes. This month's theme is community amenities. So here are tonight's speakers. And Shelley is up next. And it's a little bit out of theme. April is our marine theme, but Shelley's unavailable in April, so she's going to present right now. So I'm going to just do a little bit of background to set her up for success, and then we'll hear from Shelley. So that is the shipping channel in blue, and faded back is the project site map. And if we zoom in on this and look at the bathymetry, which is the topography, the elevation of the ground under the water, the dark purple is the deepest, and then purple is less deep, and then blue, and then green, and up to yellow and red, which are on land. If we cut a cross section across that, so the project site is up on the top, Tuluwat Island's down on the bottom, and there's the nav channel in the middle. If you think of this as like cutting an apple from the top and you look at it from the side, you would see the apple. So that's what cutting a cross section means. So this is what it would look like from the side. So there's the project site and Tuluwat Island. This is definitely not to scale. So that's where this lines up. There's the nav channel. And this is more to scale, but this is really kind of hard to see. So just be aware that really looks more like the first image there. So what we do is take that dashed line and create this new berth floor and new RSP slope so that that is the dredge cut. That is the area where the material is being removed. And it's only the top 5 feet or so that were deposited during the industrial era. So the only component of that dredge cut that is likely to have any contamination or is eligible to have contamination is that top layer. So the vast majority of what we're cutting doesn't have the history to be contaminated, except for the possibility the aquaculture has brought up of biocysts, which are like dormant algae. So again, to more of a scale, that's what the dredge cut looks like. And from above, that's the area of the berth. And so we looked across there. Also be aware that the wet storage may require some dredging. All right, so with that, I'm going to pass it off to Shelley, and I can advance your slides for you, Shelley. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay? I have my camera on as well.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rob, for the introduction. My name is Shelley Angara. I am with Moffitt and Nickel, and I'm a sediment scientist and has been brought on to help advance the design to the next stage. We really need to understand the sediment quality so that there's approximately 6 million cubic yards. You can go to the next slide, please. This is the dredge footprint that Rob just showed you. This is the grayed out area here are where new dredging will occur. These are areas that have never been dredged before. You can see the Army Corps' maintenance dredging channel in the middle. I'm sorry, somebody has their hand up. Did you have a question really quick? Maybe can't see. F. Carlson.
I don't.
Okay.
No, you're good.
Okay, great. So this is the dredge design at 15%. And what this results in, what you see here is approximately 5.5 million cubic yards of dredge material that will bring the northern area of this graphic to 40 feet depth at the wharf. And this depth is required in order to accommodate the vessels that will be coming to the facility. You can see at the southern portion of the entrance channel there is an area that's at minus 38 feet. This is the storage area. So as the turbines are assembled, they need to be stored in a floating position before they can be towed out to, or maybe stored for preparing for maintenance, before they are towed out to the ocean. So very specific conditions are required. So there is a specific amount of storage area. Also, if you can see on the graphic, lost my graphic, to the right, there is an area that it goes down to approximately 60 feet elevation. That is a deep area for the assembly of the turbines themselves. So as they're very tall, and so we need these sinking basins to go over, flood the chambers. They sink down and they're able to then add the components on the top. So we need to have some extra deep water in that one. You can see the little square there. That is the sinking basin. That is approximately 60 feet depth. So currently, this area, as you saw on the graphics from Rob, extend from the 38-foot center channel, then go up and angle towards the island and towards the northern shore of the current wharf. And again, it will generate approximately between 5.5 to 6 million cubic yards of material. So it's a very important part during the design to have an understanding of how this material needs to be managed. Next slide, please. So we have been, there we go. So one of the very first assumption that we're doing to support the engineering design is to evaluate how we're hoping this material is very clean. This is native material, as was demonstrated in Rob's presentation. There's very small amount of potential for contaminants to be integrated. This is not at the end of a river where there's industrial activity. Up there's mostly just tidal movement of sediments that kind of just move sediments around. So it's a very clean area. So our first estimate is to do what's called a characterization for suitability for open ocean. So this is a very clear set of guidelines that are established by the Army Corps of Engineers and the US EPA that look to see what kinds of tests are required to demonstrate that this material is suitable for placement in the marine environment. This test includes toxicity. It includes bioassay testing where live organisms are exposed to this sediment, and then also bioaccumulation testing. So where there's prolonged exposure of organisms to this sediment to look to see if there's a potential for chemicals in that sediment to bioaccumulate in the animal. So this is a very rigorous, very standard set of tests. So we have been working since January. We submitted a draft sampling and analysis plan to the stakeholders for review and to illustrate to them the testing that is planned for this program. And in there, we identify the HOOD's, the Humboldt Open Ocean Disposal Site, which you can see here is the square that's offshore. There's also, you can also see in this orange figure here, is there's also an identified area for this material to also be found suitable for placement on the beach if it has a very high grain size, a very high sand content. If it has lower sand content, there's a potential for the material to be placed in the littoral zone, but not on the beach, but right offshore of the beach and be a nourishment project. Right now, the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers are currently working on, it was actually discussed earlier about the beneficial use, and there would be a direct connection between this project and that pilot program that's going on. So right now, the Army Corps of Engineers and the EPA are examining whether or not the material that's being placed there, if they can demonstrate that that is having a long-term benefit to restoring the littoral zone. So we're really hoping that by the time this project is implemented, that study will be done and we'll be able to extrapolate the potential benefits of using some of this material of the 5.5 million cubic yards to also being able to be used to restore sediments that are lost in the littoral zone. So the main point of this investigation is just inform engineering designs to help us understand that this material is or is not suitable for placement at the HOOD site or in a beneficial use site at the beach. We will be considering many other beneficial use sites as this project continues to evolve. There may be other beneficial use sites where sediment is needed. Those will be considered at a later time. But at this point, we have very large assumptions about the material, and we need to confirm that our assumptions are accurate. Next slide. What you can see in this next slide is a graphic that's been going back and forth with the regulatory community and the stakeholder community, identifying the sampling locations. So far, the last version of this document is going to be shared with the community next week. We have 6 different dredge units. There's 55 sediment sampling locations. In that includes 38 sampling locations that we're hoping to be doing in this late spring, and 16 geotechnical cores that would be sampled in the summer. This information would all be combined and help us understand the potential suitability of this material to be going to offshore disposal or beneficial use. Next slide. Next slide, please. So right now, what we are is preparing for this investigation. We are requesting the approval of this final sampling and analysis plan by EPA and the rest of the stakeholders by the end of this month. We are working on submitting our sampling permits to the appropriate agencies, and the field team and laboratories are preparing for this. It's a very large event, and we're hoping to be starting our sampling program in May of 2025. So with that, I think that's the end of my presentation, but I am happy to answer any questions.
Do we want to take questions, presentation, or do?
Your call. There's 3 more speakers.
Okay, and I do realize it's getting late, but it seems like while we have the speakers here, we might as well do them presentation by presentation. But in the realization that we have a lot going on, any questions from the board or comments on this presentation?
No question here.
I have a question.
Sure.
Hey, Shelley, Greg Dale. I imagine that once the turning basin, I know from years of watching it, it has the effect up inside the bay when they dredge that. It hasn't been dredged for a while. It is still fairly deep. But when they did change that with the deepening project, it had pretty significant, it changed the way the end of Bird Island acts. And so hydrologically speaking, are you anticipating any change in areas around the bay due to this deepening?
We can see if Shelley has anything to add, but next month is a speaker on hydrodynamic modeling.
Okay. I'm sorry.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that is actually a very important part of the environmental evaluation. One of the things that we need to be able to answer is the anticipated maintenance dredging, the stability of the slopes that we're including in our design. And so there is hydrodynamic modeling that is done that will estimate and confirm that the slopes that are being assumed in the design, and will help us understand the potential maintenance dredging that does occur as sediments will continue to move around just from the tidal fluctuations. So good question.
Thank you. One more question. When we were in Scotland last year, we met with a group of people that's what their specialty is wet storage of these bases, and they suggested not digging or dredging, but flattening and sinking the bases and setting them on the bottom. Have you guys heard of that or thought about that?
I have not thought about that or have heard of that on the California coast. But that doesn't mean maybe somebody from the other parts of the design team have thought about it. But I would say it would disturb the bottom. It would continue to disturb the bottom, and that would probably be an impact that would need to be addressed in the environmental document.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone from the public wishing to comment or a question on this dredge plan? Seeing none, I think, what's our next presentation?
We have to keep going, Gary. Oh, I see. Our next presentation is going to be Brett Vivian, but I have a little opening to give context to what he's about to say. She might have left, Gary. And Brett's here, so right.
He's on there. Here we go.
Great job on the technology.
Yeah, doing great, Gary. So we need the PowerPoint back up and then share screen for the audience. No, well, he's not up yet, so he's standing by. Yep. And is that being shared for the people virtually? Looks like it.
Question.
Well, that's the PowerPoint. I think we're good. I think it's being shared. All right. So the theme tonight is community benefits and community amenities. So this is a long list of community benefits, amenities that are associated with the project, and we can come back to that if you'd like. Recall that the infra grant for 426 million, a big chunk of that is for construction of the project. But then there's also this $77.5 million of additional benefits that are not directly associated with the project. And so these are among the community benefits for the project. And 4 of these we're going to talk about tonight. So next up is Brett Vivian to talk about the paved multipurpose trail adjacent to the site. So just be aware that the west edge of the whole project site is the railroad right of way. And the Great Redwood Trail Authority has been envisioning a trail along there. And so through this project, we will be designing and building the first segment of the trail on the Samoa Peninsula. And with that, I'll pass it off to Brett.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, Brett Vivian with GHD. Excited to present this to you all. I'm a Manila resident and I go for runs down the Railroad Prism and down along here. So excited about it. And then my colleague Mark Percher will present on the Woodley Island dock upgrades, and yeah, just helped pull a couple boats out using that crane this past fall. So excited to be here. So we'll go over a little bit of the trail updates and Woodley Island dock updates. So as Rob indicated, the section of trail that we're looking at is a part of the Great Redwood Trail, and it's the Samoa to Fairhaven segment. There's a lot of great information for planning and design in a Great Redwood Trail master plan, which we're following, and then we're conducting some key outreach with Great Redwood Trail Agency, who we met with a few weeks ago and continue to coordinate with. Timber Heritage Association, because we're sharing some use there. The town of Samoa is coming up, as well as some outreach to the Wiyot tribe, in particular where their property ownership is on the north end. So with the Great Redwood Trail Agency, we held a virtual meeting. We tagged along on a site walk with their staff, and then we've been working on right of entry permits for all of the work that's being done kind of within that right of way. That also includes utility work or any sort of environmental work, but kind of working on those right of entry permits. We've met with the Timber Heritage Association and discussed the segments where it's rail with trail and then where it's okay to potentially do rail to trail, but kind of discussing their use and then just notifications for field work. They're often out there working on replacing ties and such, and so coordinating efforts between the various consultants that are doing work out there and Timber Heritage. And as I said, upcoming, we'll be meeting with the Wiyot tribe in collaboration with the Great Redwood Trail Agency and then the town of Samoa residents. So in general, in the master planning of trails, what we're looking at from Samoa to Fairhaven segment and the areas that we're looking at, we have options kind of depending on what the existing and future use of the rail corridor is, where you can keep the rail in place and build on top of it, or keep the rail in place and build the trail parallel to it, or remove the rail and build a trail. It really all just kind of depends on rail banking and several other factors of use. And so kind of a little more detailed on where if a trail is removed, kind of just the typical look. And as I share kind of the segments, you can look up to the right. There's kind of indicators of what the options are, but this would be kind of building on top of that rail prism, the existing tracks, and then building the pedestrian trail. Or in some areas, especially where Timber Heritage runs their speeder trains, and there's use of those rails, we want to have some separation there for safety and for continued use. And then there's kind of variations on how separate you make those trails from the rails. So we'll look at a couple of locations. So from Bay Street to LP Drive. So this is, or the Milwaukee Memorial. This is on the south end and south of the port site. We're only looking at kind of natural connectivity of the main line, which is the area right adjacent to the port. And so just looking at kind of concepts and connectivity and looking at opportunities and constraints. So on the south end, basically looking from the Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Memorial south. There's not really existing use or planned use of that rail line. So there's some flexibility there for the type of trail we use. And so then some of the opportunities and constraints, no really existing agreements or rail banking. We could do rail to trail or rail with trail. We do need to look into some of the easements and right of way. And then as always, any sort of ESHA impacts. Then I'll jump to the north end. This is also a stretch that's not a part of the design and permitting, but we are looking at natural connectivity. And this is where some coordination with the Wiyot tribe and their property up to the north there, near the parklet on 255. And then this is a section where Timber Heritage Association has use of that rail. And then looking at some of the opportunities and constraints, a challenging area because it's really just kind of a rail prism, and then you've got mud flat and salt marsh on both sides, but then you do have Vance Avenue there, so probably some additional coordination, but really just kind of looking at feasibility and options on that far north end and the far south end, just to kind of make sure that what we're planning for with the kind of main segment, which we will be designing, has a natural connectivity to areas where the people are using, where they're parking, and we have access. So really the main area that we're looking at, and this will be moving forward with design. So our first initial kind of identification is a technical memorandum of design, the basis of design, and the 30% design that we'll be focusing on first, and then it'll move forward with permitting and construction. But that's this segment from LP Drive, or that Milwaukee Memorial, kind of goes along Recology and then follows along the western edge of the port development site, and then between the town of Samoa, and then ends at the northern entrance to the site. So a couple kind of things to point out are that from the Samoa Post Office south, that we have a lot of flexibility there. That is not rail banked and is not identified for future use, but Timber Heritage Association would like future use from the post office north. So kind of south of where you see that yellow dot on the image, a lot of flexibility there for whatever makes sense to make sure that the footprint makes sense. And we evaluate impacts and use there. And that's on the south end. And so just some of the opportunities and constraints we need to think about: road crossings, wetland impacts, drainage will be a big part of this. And then the timber, as I said, timber heritage use of the rail line north of the Samoa Post Office. So that's just kind of a very general, brief overview, but we're moving forward, and we'll report back later.
All right, so Mark's going to present just a little context on what he's talking about. So there is a dock here on Woodley Island, the Fisherman's Work Dock. It's important to fishermen for a number of reasons, and help them get their gear on and off, take engines, motors off of boats, a lot of things like that. It's an older facility, and so we saw an opportunity here to compensate for impacts to fishermen through improvements to this particular facility. And so Mark's going to tell us about that. And Brett, you're advancing his slides.
I will.
You with us, Mark?
I am. Hopefully everyone can hear me.
Hear you.
Okay, great. Hello, my name is Mark Percher. I am also with GHD. I'm a marine structures guy. I was out there a couple weeks ago looking at this structure, and have a bit more to report on what we're finding. When we go next slide. Oh, no, that's just me. Oh, this is not good. What I can say is, the existing structure, it's a, timber structure. It's very typical of the era of construction. We think it was built probably sometime in the 1980s or so. It's very conventional timber structure. It's in fairly decent condition given the age and what it's built with. And so we do recognize that, in discussions with Rob, as well as a lot of folks from the fishing community, there are definitely some concerns / issues with the existing structure, even though generally I would say it's in kind of fair structural condition. It certainly has a fair amount of life left in it, especially if you continue to do the maintenance that requires. There are ways that it could certainly be improved. And so, the things that we did here is the existing davit cranes. There's 2 cranes on there. There's a 1-ton and a 2-ton. It sounds like some of them have some use issues. The reach is kind of limited, and obviously there's a desire for a larger crane, which would be consistent with what's over in City of Eureka Fisherman's Dock. They have I think 2 2-tons and 1 5-ton crane. So there's a lack of staging area adjacent to the dock, on the dock. There's cross traffic with the street. There's angles that one has to turn to get onto the dock. So it's difficult to get a trailer further down than just that straight path of the trestle. And obviously navigation within the marina. And so there's also questions of, what ways can we improve not just the structure, but the overall condition of the facility and use of the facility. Next slide. So what we're looking at is a couple different planned construction opportunities. These were starting off with the idea that we want to come out there with a structure that will be very resilient and will really serve the community for a long time and be of optimal use for the community. And so we're looking at, a concrete deck structure, steel pipe piles, composite fender piles, which is consistent with what's already out there, and also consistent with what we just installed over at the Fisherman's Wharf in City of Eureka. Cleats, curbs, railings, all those useful items when you go to actually tie your vessel up. We'd like to look at including a new 20-foot reach 5-ton crane. And then, electrical, fire, water, lighting, And so all of this is coming in to develop what we call a class 5 rough order of magnitude cost. And so the idea here is that as we go through additional refinement within the design, we will eventually get you down to a very accurate cost that will then hopefully match up with what bids come in during construction. But at the level that we're at right now, we kind of say that these are plus 50%, minus 30%. So there's, a variance within how accurate we can be given the limited design information that we have. And I tend to say really focus in on the plus 50% number. It's a ROM. Some people call it a wild ass guess, which would be a WAG. But the intent is that we're really trying to get this ballpark to figure out how much footprint is reasonable, what particular infrastructure can be provided, and then make sure that aligns both with the expectations of the Harbor District as well as the expectations of the community. And, inherently, because this is grant funded, there's always going to be a trade-off between what you can do and what you want to do. And so inherently, what we're going to be walking through in these options is really coming back to that trade-off. So let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to spin through a whole bunch of options. We've actually talked with some of the folks that about these. We've gotten, I think 2 really good stakeholder meetings so far. And so through those meetings, through discussions with the folks at the Harbor District, we've come up with a bunch of different concepts, and we've kind of already started the process of whittling those down to what we think are the best ones to go into the kind of environmental permitting stage. So what I'm going to show here, so like the first one is kind of mirroring, and that's kind of where we started in this process, was to say, hey, what if we mirror the dock, create a new footprint, and then also try and provide some landside staging area, which would basically be kind of like a shallow foundation supported area where you can do a little bit of laydown. So this option was intended to be, hey, let's give ourselves an easier angle to bring trucks onto the dock, better for turn radiuses. And then the entire, all of these options are really, the base assumption is that we are not removing the existing timber dock. We are really trying to take advantage of the existing footprint, but we also don't want to spend a lot of money doing seismic improvements to the existing dock either. So because of the code approaches, the intent here is that the new dock is effectively isolated from the existing with, some limited transition plate that would let you travel from one side to the other. And so that'll be fairly consistent through all these options. So then this is the first option showing kind of a 45-degree L-shaped wharf. Go to the next option, please. And then this is just a pure mirroring 90 degrees with the landside staging area. So it's very similar concept. Go to the next slide, please. Here, what we're trying to do is optimize for how do we give ourselves the minimal cost opportunity and allow for expansion if we find that those costs are coming in better than we want. So this is kind of saying, well, let's not build a trestle. Let's just drive straight from the existing timber dock onto New Berth. But then we can afford a bit more of the landside staging area, and we can adjust this length depending on how our cost estimates shape up as the design develops. Obviously, this has some issues in that you're still using the existing access, which is not fantastic. Next concept. This is what I call something completely different. It's just, hey, what if we built a pier? The big advantages of pier type structure is that you have more surface area to put boats up against. The disadvantage is you create additional navigation challenges. And this is kind of spending all your money on the pier structure, and you're not really doing much on the land side. Let's go to the next option. So following the most recent meeting that we had with the fishing community, we kind of got the feedback that, hey, what we'd actually really like to see is infill this so that we have the most opportunity to move around within a set kind of rectangular footprint, more like a marginal wharf, where there's a wider work area. And so the next, what we're calling concept 5 options, is really looking at playing with that idea, and then also playing with, well, what if we took some of the money that is intended to be used for this overall facility, you know, money that for the first 4 options, we're really looking at spending purely on the water side, and also give a better shoreside storage area. So when we say storage yard, this is really looking behind the existing Harbor District laydown yard into what is currently kind of a vacant lot. So this first option here is saying, well, let's still focus in on just providing the most amount of money that we have into the marine structure. And, you know, obviously you're getting a lot more area of deck. It's all consolidated together. There would be, you know, more complexity in that you're kind of creating these transition plates on 3 sides of the structure. But in theory, it kind of behaves like one structure at the end of the day, just with that big isolation joint in the middle. The next slide. This kind of shows like, well, what if we split the difference? Let's spend some of our money on the land side storage area and still most of the money on the water side wharf structure. And one of the things that we did hear back from the fishermen that we did talk to is that, you know, hey, this land side storage is very important to us. And recognizing that, we want to play around with how much cost would be incurred from providing both, you know, lay down kind of gravel area, as well as what is effectively kind of a carport structure. It's basically a place that is undercover that they can store their crab pots and keep them out of the sun. And so obviously, once you start talking about introducing additional structure in that landside storage yard, the costs for that go up, and that starts kind of eating away at what we can do over the water. But this concept 5B is intended to be kind of the middle ground of, we're still doing quite a bit of new wharf, but we also are providing some landside area, and it's going to be a balancing of the two. And then the last option is kind of go to 5C, please. So 5C is really maximizing the landside available space, but minimizing what you're able to do over water. And so here, you know, you're basically pretty much at the footprint of the existing timber dock, but with a new infill set of structures that will allow for easier access and more opportunities to kind of get to all the areas of the dock with a vehicle. Here, if we're looking at, you know, introducing a new crane, we probably would want to take out one of the existing cranes. So maybe the 2-ton crane goes and you put a 5-ton crane in its place. The nice thing here is you would get a lot more landside space, and you would also be able to get a larger carport with that shared funding. So why don't we go to the next slide? So this is just really intended to give an understanding of the good, the bad, the ugly of all of these various options when it comes to some of the key criteria that we're really concerned about. And so I think, you know, I believe our recommendation is really going to come back to kind of these 5A, 5B, with some form of something akin to a marginal wharf, where you have more overwater, you know, space between the land side and the face of the berth, but then also making sure that you have some funds to do improvements in that landside storage area, including, you know, gravel paving and carports. So you know, my expectation is that as we transition into more detailed design understanding, we will hopefully be able to come up with some cost improvements, more economical designs that allow us to hopefully get a bit of both. So hopefully we'll get closer to the 5A, you know, larger marginal wharf, as well as be able to do those improvements in the backlands as we refine the design and get a better understanding of cost. Go to the next slide. So in regards to our next steps, what our current scope is to feed towards what we're calling a 5% design. So that's basically an understanding of here is our selected concept, and that gets us to kind of developing the start of the development for what will be 30% design for the environmental permitting documents. So hopefully we're going to have this meeting, and I believe possibly another meeting with the fishing community later in the month that will allow us to kind of select the best design to move forward with, and then go on to the next phase. And I believe that,
All right.
I believe that's presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Right.
Thank you. And is there another one still following? Is that correct? Or was that it for this?
I think it's just me with a closing couple of slides.
Okay,
But
well, why don't you take your closing couple of slides and then we'll take comments on.
And we do have a guest speaker to speak about the Bay Trail South, which I feel bad about how late. Maybe
Yeah, I
it's-
know things are getting late. I was gonna propose moving a few things around as soon as we're done with
Okay.
this item.
So I'll just flash through this here. So another thing that is in the grant that we just received is a Woodley Island Sailing and Recreation Center. This was at the request of the sailing club and recreational users of the bay. So if you look at this part of Woodley Island right there, that space is about half an acre. The Adorney Center would easily fit on there. Not that we're proposing the Adorney Center, but just for context. This project can interfere with recreational sailing up here. So the nav channel will never be blocked, but areas of wet storage are currently used by the sailing community. And so they asked for a sailing and recreation center to be considered as an amenity for the project. And so we have budget for stakeholder engagement, concept design, environmental studies, permitting, and advanced design for this concept now. What is a sailing and rec center? We don't know. Maybe a clubhouse, kayak storage rentals, kayak launches, recreational boating, informational education center, meeting space, some other possibilities, and we have to be careful about operational costs. So each one of these things here we'd have to really think through. Even if we got money to build it, could we continue to operate and maintain it? And then last, we are looking at recreational boating infrastructure, including ADA kayak launches. And then the community benefit program I have shared with you before, so I'm going to skip through that. And the community benefit, the community advisory committee is advising us on this. Next month is the marine theme. And that is the whole presentation.
Oh, great. Thank you. Very quick breeze through of all those slides. But,
Time is a lot of good information.
but if anyone, yeah, there's a lot of good information in those slides. So it's too bad we had to breeze through them so quickly. But from the board, any questions or comments on the trail dock or the additional slides that are provided?
Yeah, I just have one question for Brett Vivian on the GRTA, Samoa Fairhaven part of the trail. So on that northern segment that looks like it might cozy up to Vance Avenue, will that still be a class 1 trail? Will it have enough offset from the road to still be a class 1 trail?
You're referring to on the north end at that parklet. Potentially, we're looking at, yeah, we're looking at those options and what it would take to do that, and then coordinating with the WIOT their property.
As you're thinking to have that be blacktop like asphalt or concrete in terms of the surface of the trail, or you're not there yet?
Yeah, kind of just looking at options and just identifying kind of a suite of options that could work there, and then just to inform future development of that segment.
So you're not yet considering fencing, signage, lighting, any of those?
I am intentionally staying very vague.
Okay,
Yes.
I got it. Fair enough. We'll ask those questions when it's time. Thank you.
All right, Aaron?
I just wanted to mention that I'm really appreciative of allowing the fishermen to have a voice about the construction of the dock and what's best for our needs. I've been involved with that process so far, and it's kind of an evolution that seems to be working well. We started with 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we're at 5. So hopefully we have the right plan.
And then I'll just add, as someone who's an occasional bike commuter and bikes around here quite a bit from Blue Lake here to Eureka, with the people here in this room, that Samoa Bridge could sure use a bike lane. I'll just phrase it as a statement or a comment instead of a question. Anything from the public?
Hi, Sylvia with Humboldt Waterkeeper. I'm curious, did you guys take sea level rise into consideration for planning both the trail and the Woodley Island improvements? I just checked the NOAA sea level rise layers that were released last year, and it looks like both the wharf and the section of the railroad that goes under the Samoa Bridge would be submerged by 3 feet of sea level rise, which is about a little less than a meter.
Yeah, so that will be incorporated in the design, but I mean, everything's a waiting game.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if I can add to that, you know, we have talked about that in regards to the dock. I think the intent is that we keep adaptability in mind, you know, and so inherently there's a challenge that the existing roadway that accesses the existing structure is at a set elevation that matches that of the existing structure. So it's difficult to raise that existing timber dock, and you know the cost of replacement gets pretty high. But in the future, you know, there would be, after 20 or 30 years, you can do things like adding seawalls to the edge of the concrete structure, replacing the existing timber with a newer structure that would allow you to account for future sea level rise.
Cody Freitas, operating engineers. I just want to make a comment about the work dock situation and the input from the fishermen on that. And I also wanted to point out success I've seen with smaller work areas, the utilization of the electric trailer caddies for helping some of the fishermen move their stuff around in tighter spaces. They can pivot very easily. They're electric, so they're rechargeable. They can be charged on shore power, connected to shore power, and they could be able to get their 25 and 30-foot trailers, long necks, goosenecks, whatever they have in there, and be able to maneuver in tight spaces. Thank you.
Anything else on these items? All right.
So, Mr. Chair, I know you're looking at rearranging the agenda. Hank Seaman with the County Public Works Department is here for this particular item.
Yes, I was going to suggest we go right into that next and then move to the item E, consider accepting public comment via Zoom, then back to the fiscal year budget and end with the advisory committees. So unless there's any objections to that, I think I'll go with that. Thank you for your patience, Hank. And a lot of great information.
So good evening, Hank Seaman, Public Works Deputy Director for the county, and I'd like to just give you a brief overview of a planning study that we're wrapping up to extend the Humboldt Bay Trail from Eureka south to College of the Redwoods. And the county has led the construction of the Bay Trail project that's currently in construction, and that project's on track to be completed this summer, either June or July. And so that'll complete the connection between Eureka and Arcata. That project's been in development for several years. That was being developed before the legislative change of the railroad from railroad to the Great Redwood Trail. And so that project is actually being built with the trail parallel and offset from the rail. And so now with the Great Redwood Trail Agency managing this infrastructure, this study looked at placing the trail directly on the rail corridor. So I just want to give you kind of a bird's eye view of the project area and talk about some of the issues. This project started maybe 3 years ago. Once the Bay Trail along the safety corridor was into the construction phase, we wanted to think about what's the next frontier. And this is where we started to look as the biggest priority to expand regional trails, both for alternative or active transportation and also to provide additional recreation opportunities. And this area is also a priority to support King Salmon, Fields Landing, and Humboldt Hill. Currently, those communities are really isolated and depend on vehicles for trips into Eureka. And having a trail here would also help students at College of the Redwoods who have housing in Eureka to get to school without needing a vehicle. So this has been a collaboration on a planning study with the county and Redwood Community Action Agency. Harbor District participated in an advisory committee. And again, we're looking at a paved multi-use path that could be used for transportation and recreation. So the project would start at Tooby Road, where Eureka has its trailhead for its most recent extension along the Elk River estuary. And so we would be tying into that and heading southward. So we'd be going along the railroad corridor. We would be following what Eureka's done, and we would be significantly offset from that revetment. And there would be most likely a need to acquire some additional right-of-way to be able to build the trail outside the rail right-of-way. And then we have a few visual simulations, and this is the first one. So this shows the rail corridor converted to a trail crossing King Salmon Avenue. And this shows a simulation of the trail passing through Fields Landing. Okay. And the orange arrows show the railroad corridor passing through South Fields Landing, going across Depot Road, and going past Humboldt cabinets or Humboldt countertops. And then the planning study proposed putting the trail directly on the rail corridor. So we'd be adjacent to the Harbor District's property here and just staying in the rail right away. And then south of Fields Landing, it's a very interesting transition. This is where the railroad really serves as the shoreline. And there's some urgency to do work down here. There's erosion on the rail corridor, on the rail prism, and there's also some inappropriate material, some concrete and rebar there. And so having a trail project would be an opportunity to remove that material and also to stabilize the shoreline. This is a visual simulation kind of south of Fields Landing towards the off-ramp towards Tompkins Hill Road. And as part of the planning study, we worked with Northern Hydrology to do a sea level rise vulnerability assessment. And then with the engineer GHD, we have a preliminary design for this segment that would include a living shoreline component so that we would have more of a vegetated bench adjacent to the rail corridor that would help attenuate energy and also provide some diversity along that shoreline. And then the rail corridor continues under the 101 overpass, goes between 101 and Tompkins Hill Road. And then here we would jump off the rail corridor and wrap around, go parallel to Tompkins Hill Road, and then have an entrance really at the central entrance to College of the Redwoods. And College of the Redwoods is very excited about the prospect of this regional trail extending to College of the Redwoods. And they're even contemplating having that central entrance be pedestrian only or trail user only to be able to isolate uses kind of entering the campus. So that's the bird's eye view. We're currently wrapping up our consultation with the Wiyot tribe, and we're aiming to finish this planning study in the next few months. We do have a 30% preliminary engineering design, and that'll allow developing an estimated project cost. And then there'll be a need for a decision about lead agency, whether it's Great Redwood Trail Agency, whether it's the county, and just a financial plan to work through the project development phases. So this is a big infrastructure project, multiple years. It's a complicated project area, but the first step is a really solid planning study. We do have some documents on the website, and as soon as we finish our consultation, we'll be finalizing the plan and then trying to work with GRTA moving forward. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Very exciting.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you very much.
Any comments, questions from the board? Aaron?
Well, as a resident of Fields Landing and representative of the First Division, First District, let's get her done.
Yeah, I have similar just enthusiasm, for this. I'm hoping to live long enough to ride my bike from CR to Trinidad, and it looks like it's going to be doable. 20 years ago, I wasn't sure whether I'd live long enough to see it, and I'm feeling more and more optimistic all the time. So thank you for your work and RCA's work on this, Hank. One other comment is just, really excited about the living shoreline component of this, because that can serve as a model for other parts of the bay as well. And as a harbor commission, we're looking for beneficial reuse of clean sediments, and so living shorelines is a possible nexus with that. And so just want to stay in communication about that, because we might be able to provide sources for you. No promises, but just conceptually. Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add, again, thank you for work on this, looking forward to it. And are there any slough or crossings going to be built with the kinetic sculpture race in mind, so that we can cross over without having to exit the trail and drag it down embankments and back up?
Sculpture for a user we hadn't contemplated yet.
Yeah.
We'll add that to the.
Yeah, in the planning stage. I mean, that would be great for like other, it's it brings a lot of people into the community. Anybody from the public wish to comment or questions on this item?
Cody Freitas, operating engineers, and with the building trades. Just gonna change it up every time I come up here. Just wanted to point out that first section that you pointed out, that was the South Bay Trail. I believe the county was the awarding body on that project. It went out for originally, I think, $12.8 billion or $1 million. That was awarded to a non-union contract that's been out there. And since that's been about 2 years that they've been working out there. And when that project gets completed, they will be well under the 20% requirement the state has for apprenticeship hours on that project. And so if we do move forward with something, the ability to be more firm with that and ensure that the students in that MC3 program Chris brought up earlier, or people in state approved apprenticeships, have the opportunity to actually get the training on these projects is something that is very important to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on this? All right, then, like I mentioned before, I would like to move on to item E. Consider accepting public comment via Zoom.
Thank you, Chair. So there's been a lot of outreach to staff over a period of time in regarding to reinstate the option to accept public comment over Zoom. So tonight, staff is recommending that the commission consider such and ultimately begin the implementation of community comment or public comment over Zoom via Zoom, starting at the May 8th board meeting. It's important to note that we have made a lot of strides in our community engagement, and most specifically in our community engagement plan. We talk about meaningful engagement and input opportunities, and I'll read this directly. They're inclusive, equitable, and an unbiased process that allow the community genuine opportunities to provide input, make recommendations, and offer feedback, each of which are key objectives set forth by this board. So knowing that is something we've adopted here at the Harbor District, presented to you as a commission, the commission adopted it, directed staff to implement it. It's important that we give this consideration. It's also very important to know that technology isn't perfect. Zoom is not perfect. So as part of the implementation of this, staff would include a disclaimer on all agendas that it is preferred that you come in person, because if there is a technical challenge with community comment or public comment, it will not stop the meeting, and that comment may not be recorded into the record. I also want to point out on this item before we hear it that we received by written comment a letter from Tri-County Independent Living and from Humboldt Waterkeeper in support of this item. In addition, we've had a large amount of communication directly with the Core Hub, which is one of the groups we meet with regularly, people from tribal government, and some of our more rural constituency who've called previously asking about something that we had reinstate. And it's been a big popular option from our senior population. And they've identified we're senior population. It's hard for us to get out. We don't drive after dark. A particular 3 that used to come to our meetings very regularly. So this is all outreach that we've received. I want to present it to you tonight. So staff has a recommendation. Can you hit the grand total button there for me? There you go. The staff recommends that the board consider accepting public engagement during regular monthly commission meetings via Zoom and direct us to implement such. I want to point out this does not include special meetings, and that is by design. We sometimes have to call special meetings that are not physically in a site where we can conduct over Zoom. So this would be specific to regular board meetings, and I want to make sure that we make that clear. That doesn't mean if we called a special board meeting in this room that we could not accept comment over Zoom. But it is not uncommon, and it has happened in the last period prior that we've had special meetings that were not on site. And so we just need to make sure that we're clear that that isn't always an option. This is specific to regular board meetings.
I move to accept public comment via Zoom.
I would second.
Hey, thank you. And with the full recommendation, direct staff to implement the procedures and begin receiving such comments starting with the May 8th deadline, or
As soon as possible.
ideally? Yeah. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board?
I'll just say that, we've been, while this is the first time this has been up in public, it's something we've been hearing from the public, and we've been considering and anticipating being on the agenda, and I don't have a whole lot more to discuss about it. I'm very ready to move forward with this.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly, and I also want to say, like, I understand as someone who runs a lot of hybrid meetings and participates in other board meetings that there are challenges, and I appreciate the hard work that staff has done keeping the meetings running. And sometimes it's hard to have participants both in the room and outside of the room fully engaged and able to do it. So I know staff is going to do the best that they can in the face of those challenges. So I'm glad that we're moving forward this way, but I think, I don't want to diminish the amount of work that staff has put into running these meetings up the way that they have been run as well too. So thank you for that. And with that, any comment from, this is the moment you've been waiting for. This is your chance to comment.
I'll make a quick comment. I'll be in the right spot. On behalf of Tri-County Independent Living, and whose whole purpose is for people with disabilities to live independently. We thank you. We understand there's technological issues and things of that nature happen, but I think it's moving in the right direction. So thank you. And I know it's late, so thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Any other comments from the public? Please. No.
Harry Venegas, Changing Tides Family Services, based in Eureka, and a member of the Core Hub. Because we always come to you with the tough comments, I always want to say thank you. Thank you for doing this. I just think it's great for participation, particularly for folks who are further inland, and this is a really long drive, including some of our tribal neighbors. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any more? Oh, yes.
Yep. Hi there. Good evening, district commissioners and staff. I'm Amy Jester. I work with the Redwood Region Climate and Community Resilience Hub and am a resident of Eureka. I just really want to thank the staff for your recommendation to open public comment by Zoom starting in the May 2025 meeting. This is a time of significant development, evolution, and planning related to the Harbor District's projects, programs, and operations as the Nordic project and the wind terminal continue to advance, and also as key planning processes such as a Bay-wide master plan move forward. Allowing comments by Zoom creates an important mechanism for community engagement in your regular meetings, which would help in serving the vast geography and diverse constituency within your charge, particularly at this time when there's so much that's going on at the district. Allowing public comment by Zoom means something to me personally. I'm currently going through chemotherapy, and that means that my immune system's weak. Being around crowds isn't good. I can get really sick really easily. And I'm not alone. There are many of us for whom it's physically difficult or dangerous to be present in spaces with a lot of people. And there are a variety of reasons why people aren't able to participate in person. Perhaps they're not able to drive. They'd need to travel a long distance. For your Southern Humboldt constituents, that could be over an hour each way. And they might have childcare or work conflicts. So opening public comment by Zoom will create a more equitable pathway for people like myself who care deeply about this place to have an opportunity to meaningfully engage in the important public processes that this body facilitates. So thanks so much to the board for considering it, and I hope that you'll vote in favor. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sylvia, Humboldt Waterkeeper. I just want to echo the gratitude. I think that this is going to open up your meetings to a lot more people that haven't been able to come here, and it's going to make it easier for folks with disabilities, chronic illnesses, parental responsibilities, a number of reasons to be here and comment and share their opinions. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you. If there's no more additional public comment, I'll bring it back up to the board for any further comments, or can go straight to a vote. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining, hearing none, motion passes. All right. We are making progress. Thank you. Going to move back now to item B. Going all over the alphabet tonight. Consideration of initial fiscal year 2025-2026 budget preparation schedule.
So you might be surprised, but it's that time of year again. So we have to start preparing for our fiscal year 25-26 budget. It's important to recognize that we are a governmental agency in a time of great uncertainty. We are certainly meeting our obligations, but we're going to have to be very thoughtful and methodical about our budget preparation this year. It's going to take a lot of commitment from staff and commissioners, as well as our district treasurer. Mindy is out of town. This is done under the direction of the executive director. I've written the staff report in Mindy's name because I directed Mindy to take the lead on this both last year and this year. And it's an important piece that as our director of administrative services and effectively the control of the district, that she has a great participation in. She takes a lot of pride in the way that she manages our affairs and pays our bill, prepares our payroll, monitors the report, does the analysis of our various grants. In addition, this year we're going to have to consider bringing on some additional staff to support that. We are managing tens of millions of dollars of grants, large amounts of reimbursements, not to mention outside of these projects that we very excitedly talk about in here, we have an entire business model out there, an enterprise operation that cannot be neglected. And so this is going to be a long process this year, but it's going to be a very positive process. We will talk about advisory committees next, but we have two people who currently are serving that capacity as we're appointed. And that's Commissioner Norton and Commissioner Benson. So as noted in a prior meeting, we'll be reaching out to them to commence this project. Looking at these dates in the staff report, April 10th, May 8th, June 12th, these are in line with our board meetings. So meetings will occur with the committee and with staff in the weeks prior to those. There'll be approximately 2 meetings before each presentation. We'll be asking the commission to participate in at least one of those meetings, and then probably administratively thereafter. If there's any specific questions about the schedule, if we'd like to discuss it in any fashion, please let us know. But our recommendation is the board directs staff to implement the proposed fiscal year budget schedule and move onward.
Great, thank you. Do I have a motion or any comments or questions?
No questions. There's nothing to make a motion on, really, is there?
No, I think so. Oh, no, it's just a staff direction. Okay.
We're just, yeah, you're just directing staff to go ahead and proceed.
Okay, but we would still take public comment on this, I believe, right? So any public comment on our budget preparation schedule?
Woohoo.
Yeah, no, oh, come on. Bring it on. Thanks for your sticking it out tonight. All right, so I don't hear any objection to the direction for the schedule that you've presented. Thank you for the budgets get more exciting each year, and the way that you've been presenting them has been really helpful for looking at the very many aspects of what.
We promise there to be photographs this year.
Okay.
Very photogenic.
All right, then moving on to our final item of the evening, review of advisory committees and consider changes.
So we adopt advisory committees as needed. We do not always have standing committees as we have in the past, so we will call those certain committees or committees rather when they're needed. An example of that may be our Labor Relations Committee. We'll have negotiations next year with our collective bargaining unit. That'll probably commence in January of 2026 for renewal next July 1. But that wouldn't be a standing committee right now. If we had a labor relations item that had to go before the board and our executive staff by resolution, we would then work with the board president and call that particular committee. So right now, what's before us is staff's recommending that the board review the current advisory committees and confirm or amend them as necessary. So as it stands, and it's in the packet, we have an aquaculture and commercial fisheries advisory committee. We meet separately with aquaculture and fishermen at the request of them. But sometimes there are reasons to come together, but that is one standing committee. And so Commissioner Greg Dale and Commissioner Aaron Newman represent that committee. We have a budget committee, which is Benson and Norton. We have a two-bite committee that meets with the city of Eureka, and that is currently Benson and Newman. We have a community advisory committee, which was recently updated. That is Commissioner Benson and Commissioner Coleman. We have a dredging advisory committee, which is Commissioner Benson and Commissioner Dale. Commissioner Benson is very busy this year. And we have a Humboldt Bay Development Association, which is our public benefit corporation. That's a nonprofit the district runs to revitalize sites around Humboldt Bay. That is Commissioner Newman and Commissioner Norton. And the Samoa Peninsula Infrastructure Group, also known as the Offshore Wind Energy Advisory Committee. And that is Commissioner Dale and Commissioner Coleman. So these are very important meetings that occur. They're recurring. Those of you that are participating know the commitment that's necessary in these, the amount of time it takes. But these are up for your review and consideration. Otherwise, we'll proceed as currently slated.
I'm sure I've asked you this in the past, but was there a county 2x2 committee, or is that the infrastructure committee?
There is a county 2x2 committee. I would probably be calling that next month. So there's a little bit of change on their side, and we have a little bit of confusion who the commissioners are, so it was not included in this. I'll be reaching out to the board president to talk about that.
Sounds good to me. I think this is a good slate, but have anyone reviewing this at this time have any comments on the committees that they're on or not on, or the need for any additional committees?
We can always add committees as needed. So this is a living document. It's not.
Limited.
Yeah, it's not limited.
And yeah, so we can, as needed, do ad hoc committees, and these are advisory committees. So no action is taken by these committees.
Correct.
It's just to advise staff. So then I guess this is also not an action item, just to review, but I'll bring it out to the public if there is any comment on us having committees and who sits upon those.
No, never mind. I'll answer my own question by reading further.
All right,
well,
bringing it back then, I see no reason to change any of the committees as stand, but I appreciate you bringing that to us for our review.
Absolutely. So it'll be probably a recurring business matter throughout the year as these committees are either exhausted or new items come up.
And were you hoping for any kind of a formal motion or just this?
No, this is just to confirm that these committees actually can be set at the pleasure of the president. We wanted to bring it to the community and just make sure it was public. We had a chance to talk about it.
I can just go ahead and assign you all to committees if I want.
We do have names in a hat. Let me grab it.
But then we'd want people to actually show up. Well, seeing that is our last item, We are adjourned. Thank you so much for coming out here tonight. Thank you for everybody listening online.
Thank you.
And for staff, great job, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.